Okay, now we're on a part of Ninja Turtles that people either really liked or really hated. Because with me, I was legit open to see how Rise of the TMNT was going to turn out. I mean, yeah, it was drastically different, but here's the thing, like with the Michael Bay movies, I didn't like them because they're like, hey, here's the characters you know and love, just botched horribly. With Rise, I feel like they were legit trying to do something new, like just not rehash the same stuff over again, so that's why I was more open to it. I mean, yeah, the art style reminded me of Teen Titans Go, but when you gave the show a shot, it was funny, and the story wasn't that bad once you got to it, and unlike Teen Titans Go, which refused to die and at the time of making this video, it's still going with no signs of stopping. Though with Rise, I think it ended when it needed to. I mean, yeah, it was cut short halfway through its second season, but they were at least given the heads up to give us an awesome finale. So I think it ended on a really high note, the show at least. Then when they announced the movie, I was honestly surprised because the studio didn't care for the show and they cut it short halfway through its second season, so why would they greenlight a movie? And then the year 2020 happened, and when that did, I was surprised the movie didn't get canceled. But when it did come out, I was amazed, and no, let me just get into the movie. Just a heads up, this movie takes place after the show's finale, and if there's parts about it that don't make sense to a casual Ninja Turtle fan, I'm sorry, but I'm not really gonna get too deep into that. So I'm just gonna talk about this movie assuming you've seen the show already. If not, sorry. Anyways, let's begin. The movie begins on a pretty damp note, like the world is more or less destroyed and two of the turtles are presumed dead. I'm actually serious, we don't see Donatello, and for Raphael, all we see is Leonardo with what looks to be his robotic arm attached to him. So all that's left is Leo and Mikey. Along with this movie's version of Casey Jones, who I actually liked a lot more than the Michael Bay version. Mostly because he actually kind of feels like Casey, or at least he's a lot more interesting. In a last-ditch effort to save New York City, Mikey destroys himself just so we can send Casey back in time to before this all happened and hopefully save everyone. And right as Casey gets thrown to the past, we see Leonardo get vaporized, practically confirming that all four turtles in this timeline are dead. Thankfully, Mikey's sacrifice was not put in vain since it did work, and now Casey's gonna go look for the turtles to hopefully get help. We then cut to the turtles, probably shortly after their final battle with the Shredder, and they're stacking pizzas on their head while tightroping over a bridge. But they don't have time for this, seeing as how villains are stealing stuff. And the two villains we get are Warren Stone and Hypnopotamus. And before you ask, yes, these two are in the show. And I'm not gonna lie, the animation in this opening fight scene with the turtles and these two is really good. The show itself had great animation, but this movie steps it up. And the fact that they went this far with it, despite it being part of a series of Ninja Turtles that not many people cared about when it first came out, is honestly amazing. The mission doesn't go too well, Leonardo is not much of a team player in this movie. Which is kind of interesting because, believe it or not, in the show, Raphael was the leader. And at the very end of the show, it was then that Leo was deemed leader of the team. But in this movie, even though it takes place immediately after, he's not taking that role very seriously. And because of this, the Foot Clan get their hands on what they were trying to steal. And we'll find out later in the movie what it's for. Back at the lair, Raphael tries to tell Leo what it's like to be a leader, but he blows him off and Raph gets angry and punches him. We then see Splinter getting angry at them, but not for the reasons you think. It's mostly because they're being too loud and he wants to watch TV. That's it. We then cut to Casey looking for clues on where to find the turtles. He does find one clue on a picture Leonardo gave him from when they're all still alive, which leads him to Eastman University, where we see April doing some investigating. What kind of investigating? Well, she's trying to follow a conspiracy that the school's been doing something illegal. She doesn't find much except for these random test tubes containing God knows what. And it doesn't take too long for Casey to meet up with her, but April ends up taking him out quite easily, and she ends up taking him to the turtles for questioning. And while he's there, the turtles ask him a pretty good question. Why does he have a picture of them all together even though they have no memory of taking said photo? And his explanation is that he's from the future, which leads to Donatello giving a really funny excuse as to why time travel doesn't work.
Oh, please. If time travel were possible, future Donnie would have come back and already given me all the lottery numbers. Like we planned.
He then goes on to explain more what happened in his timeline, and he said a race of beings called the Krang came and destroyed everything, which ends up scaring Splinter. He does end up giving a pretty cool backstory about how there were once beings from the stars that came and destroyed everything, until they were sealed away thousands of years ago. But unfortunately, the steel that kept them away all these years was what got stolen at the beginning of the movie by the Foot Clan. In a desperate attempt to save the future, the Turtles go to the Foot Clan's base to stop the ritual to set the Krang free. Unfortunately, they fail, and when the Krang get set free, they end up taking away their mystic powers and get ready for their preparation to take over the world. Despite the setback, they do try to fight them off, but they end up standing no chance at all against them, and even though the Turtles try to retreat, Raphael stays behind just so all of them can escape in time. Most of them do make it back to the lair, but unfortunately, they all kind of come back traumatized by how powerful their new enemy is. But thankfully, they do get the seal to send them back, but without their mystic powers, this will not be an easy task, especially with Raphael being captured. And speaking of Raphael, the Krang interrogate him trying to get information out of him. He does not comply, but they end up just shoving their tentacles in his brain, getting what they want anyways. And it's also around this point in the movie where we see that the Krang can infect living beings and turn them into monsters that do whatever they say. What's left of the Turtles and Casey go to look for Raphael, while April and Splinter stay behind to figure out how to destroy the seal, just so when they send them back, they can destroy it and they can't come back. Unfortunately though, the Krang find out where they're hiding and they end up having to make a quick getaway. The Turtles aren't faring much better either because when they get there, the place is swarming with a bunch of Krang monsters that they could just barely hold off. But thankfully, one of the canisters April stole from the school ends up melting off one of the eyes of one of the Krang leaders. Yeah, this doesn't really come back later to help with the story, to be honest. The rescue mission to save Raphael doesn't go too well, and Casey ends up scolding Leonardo about it. And it makes sense, because in his timeline, Leo was labeled as the greatest ninja. Well, here, he's just a really cocky teenager who honestly thinks he's the best ninja ever because of his stories, and he just defeated the Shredder in the series finale right before this movie. Thankfully, Leo does get it together and reunites with everyone. They even find Raphael, who ends up getting controlled by the Krang, which leads to him beating them all up and taking the seal just so the Krang can bring more of their kind to New York City, along with the Technodrome. And I'm not gonna lie, I really love the design of the Technodrome in this movie. The Krang also bring with them 3 exosuits which make them stronger, which leads to New York trying to defend itself against the Krang and failing, and also proving that Casey's future is still going to exist if they don't do anything. All hope ends up looking lost when it seems like Casey's future is going to happen no matter what, but Leonardo decides to finally step up as a leader and convince everyone to fight one last time in order to save the future. And so the Turtles head off to the Technodrome to try and save Raph one more time. Mikey and Donnie go to hack the computer to take control of the Technodrome, while Leonardo goes to look for Raph. As you can see, it's not going too well for him. Unfortunately, they all end up getting captured, but thankfully through some kind words, Leonardo is able to convince Raph to snap out of his trance, and I'm assuming through willpower they get their mystic powers back. I don't know, it's not really explained all that well, and to be honest, I really don't care. I'm having too much of a good time with this movie. We then cut back to the others fighting another one of the Krang generals, which they end up defeating by knocking a building on top of them. We then cut back to the Turtles having a fight with the Krang leader, and I'm just gonna say it. It's this fight scene alone that makes me wish this movie got released in theaters, because look at the animation on this. It's amazing. And the fact that they were even able to pull this off, especially during COVID, is even more of a miracle. But unfortunately, even with all the turtles combining their powers, it's still not enough to take him out. Seriously, watch what happens. In a last-ditch effort to save everyone, Leonardo sends himself and the Krangler into Dimension X to stop him, while also asking Casey to seal the portal behind him just so he can stay there. The plan does end up working, but like I said, Leonardo is trapped and is possibly going to die soon. Mikey does end up opening a portal into Dimension X, but thankfully he has his brothers with him, so he won't rip himself apart like his future self did trying to send Casey back in time. And thankfully they are able to succeed in bringing Leo back, while also having the Krangler stuck in Dimension X forever. And with that, the movie ends with all the Krang getting taken into government custody, and all the turtles celebrating with pizza. I mean, how else do you end a Ninja Turtle movie? And there's my video on Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. And yeah, this was a really good movie, especially given the circumstances they have to work with just to even make it at all. And for a movie that was just dumped on Netflix out of nowhere, okay, it was advertised just barely, but I'm amazed with how it turned out. Like, I feel like more people should see this movie. And want to hear some fun facts about this version of the Ninja Turtles? They actually made all four turtles different turtle species. No joke, like Raphael's supposed to be a snapping turtle, Leonardo's supposed to be a red-eyed turtle, Donatello's supposed to be a soft-shell turtle, and Mikey's supposed to be a box turtle. Isn't that interesting? Also, I swear, at this point in the movie, like, this was supposed to be Agent Bishop. I don't know why. I feel like it was supposed to be him. Unfortunately, when it comes to the home media release of Rise, all we had were these 2 DVDs, and they did not have many episodes, like 4 or 3 at the most per disc. I only say that because the show is formatted to where it's like 20 minutes, but you get like 11-minute segments, except for the really story important episodes, so yeah, these DVDs did not even cover like a half the first season, so. And I haven't heard any plans to release the rest of the show, which is unfortunate because every Ninja Turtle show has been released in its entirety. Like, you have the original series on DVD, we got the 2003 series literally last year, you have the 2012 show, and we have Next Mutation, so I want this show to have a complete series box set. I feel like more people should check it out, and I also feel like it should be properly archived. You can only dream. But enough about that. We have one more major movie to look at next time, and that being the most recent film of it, Mutant Mayhem.